At my baby shower, my mother-in-law whispered, "That's not your husband's baby." I went cold, my hands trembling as I set down the delicate teacup I'd been holding. The words hit me like ice water, but what happened next changed everything forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning of my baby shower, I woke up with that familiar flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. I was 7 months pregnant with what everyone assumed was my first child, and my husband Marcus had insisted we celebrate properly. His mother, Vivian, had volunteered to host it at her sprawling Victorian home in Meadowbrook, complete with the perfectly manicured garden and imported china she loved to show off. I should have known something was wrong when she greeted me at the door with that tight smile of hers, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Celeste, darling," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks in that affected way she'd picked up after her trip to France. "You look radiant." The pause was deliberate, loaded with something I couldn't quite place. The house was decorated beautifully, I had to admit. Soft lavender and cream streamers draped from the crystal chandelier, and elegant floral arrangements adorned every surface. About 20 women had gathered, mostly Marcus's relatives and family friends, along with a few of my co-workers from the marketing firm where I'd worked before taking maternity leave. Everything looked picture-perfect, like something out of a magazine spread. For the first hour, things went smoothly. We played the usual games, guessing baby food flavors and measuring my belly with ribbon. My sister-in-law Harper kept everyone laughing with stories about her own pregnancy mishaps, and even Marcus's intimidating Aunt Patricia seemed to be enjoying herself. I felt genuinely happy, surrounded by what felt like a circle of support, as I prepared to welcome my daughter into the world. The gifts were thoughtful and generous. A hand-knitted blanket from my neighbor Mrs. Chen, a beautiful rocking chair from my college roommate Sophia, and an antique music box that had belonged to Marcus's grandmother. I was starting to think maybe I'd misjudged Vivian's intentions, that perhaps she genuinely wanted to celebrate this new chapter in our lives. That's when she asked to speak with me privately. "Celeste, dear, could you help me in the kitchen for a moment?" Her voice was sweet as honey, but something about her expression made my stomach clench. I followed her through the dining room, past the elaborate spread of finger sandwiches and petit fours she'd ordered from the expensive bakery downtown. The kitchen was empty, our guests' laughter echoing faintly from the living room. Vivian moved to the window overlooking her rose garden, her back to me as she spoke. "You know, I've been thinking quite a bit about this pregnancy of yours." She turned around slowly, her pale blue eyes studying my face with surgical precision. "What do you mean?" I asked, though something deep in my chest was already starting to pound. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume, the same scent that had always made me feel slightly nauseous even before pregnancy. "Well, it's just interesting timing, don't you think? Marcus was away on that business conference in Seattle for 3 weeks in February. And if my calculations are correct..." She let the sentence hang there, watching my reaction. My mouth went dry. "Vivian, what exactly are you suggesting?" She smiled then, but it wasn't kind. It was the smile of someone who thought they held all the cards. "I'm not suggesting anything, dear. I'm simply observing that the timing doesn't quite add up. Unless, of course, there's something you'd like to share with me." I felt the room spin slightly, gripping the marble countertop to steady myself. "That's absolutely ridiculous. Of course, this is Marcus's baby." "Is it, though?" She moved even closer, her voice dropping to that whisper that would haunt me. "Because I did a little research, Celeste. I know about your lunch meetings with that colleague of yours, David Morrison. I know about the late nights at the office when Marcus was traveling. I know about the hotel receipt I found in your purse that day I borrowed it to get your car keys." The hotel receipt. My blood turned to ice. I remembered that receipt from a work conference in Denver where David and I had indeed stayed at the same hotel. Nothing had happened between us, but I could see how it might look to someone determined to find fault. "You went through my purse?" I managed to whisper. "I'm protecting my son," she said simply. "And I won't let him raise another man's child, believing it's his own. You have two choices, Celeste. You can tell him the truth yourself, or I will." The room felt like it was closing in around me. Through the archway, I could see our guests happily chatting, completely unaware of the bomb that had just been dropped. My hands instinctively moved to my belly, protecting the life growing inside me, the daughter Marcus and I had planned for and dreamed about. "There's nothing to tell him," I said, finding my voice again. "Because this is his baby. I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but I won't let you destroy our family with your paranoid fantasies." Vivian's expression hardened. "Fantasies? Oh, my dear girl, I don't deal in fantasies. I deal in facts. And the fact is, I will not stand by and watch my son be made a fool of." She glanced toward the living room where someone had started opening gifts in our absence. "Shall we rejoin the party? I'm sure everyone's wondering where the guest of honor has gone." I followed her back to the living room on unsteady legs, my mind reeling. How could she know about David? We'd been careful to keep our friendship professional, though I couldn't deny there had been a connection between us. But nothing physical had ever happened. The hotel receipt was from separate rooms, separate floors even. Yet somehow, in Vivian's hands, innocent circumstances had been twisted into evidence of an affair that never occurred. The rest of the shower passed in a blur. I smiled when expected, thanked guests for their gifts, and made all the appropriate responses, but inside, I felt like I was drowning. Every time I caught Vivian's eye, she gave me that same knowing smile, as if she were counting down the minutes until she could destroy everything I held dear. Marcus arrived as the party was winding down, his face lighting up when he saw me, surrounded by gifts and well-wishers. He kissed me gently, his hand resting on my belly as he asked how I was feeling. The tenderness in his touch made my heart ache, knowing that his mother was planning to poison him against me, against our unborn child. "Did you have a good time, sweetheart?" he asked, and I could only nod, not trusting my voice. That night, as we lay in bed in our small apartment across town, Marcus talked excitedly about the gifts we'd received and how real everything was starting to feel. "I can't wait to meet our little girl," he said, his voice full of wonder. "She's so lucky to have you as her mother." I wanted to tell him everything, to explain about his mother's accusations and the twisted web she was weaving. But how could I explain without sounding guilty, without planting seeds of doubt that might never be uprooted? Instead, I lay there in the darkness, my hand on my belly, feeling our daughter's gentle movements and wondering how I was going to protect us both from the storm I knew was coming. Because I knew Vivian well enough to understand that this was just the beginning. She wasn't the type of woman to make idle threats or to give up easily when she'd set her mind to something. She had declared war on me, and I was going to have to decide how to fight back. The attack started subtly at first. 3 days after the shower, Vivian called Marcus while I was in the bathroom, her voice drifting through our thin apartment walls. When I emerged, he was frowning at his phone, a crease between his eyebrows that hadn't been there before. "Everything." "Okay?" I asked, settling beside him on our worn couch. "Mom was just asking about your doctor appointments," he said slowly. "She wants to know if I've been going with you to all of them." My stomach clenched. Why would she ask that? Marcus shrugged, but I could see the seed of confusion planted. She said something about how important it is for fathers to be involved from the beginning, that she hopes I'm not missing anything important. I forced my voice to stay level. "You've been to every appointment you could make it to. Work doesn't always allow it, but Dr. Patterson has been very understanding." Yeah, that's what I told her. But he was still frowning, and I knew Vivian's carefully chosen words had done their job. That weekend, she invited us for dinner. I didn't want to go, but Marcus insisted it would be rude to decline, especially since she'd made his favorite pot roast. The meal was tense, with Vivian making pointed comments about family resemblances and how amazing it was that babies could look so different from their parents sometimes. You know, she said, cutting her meat with surgical precision. Marcus was the spitting image of his father from the moment he was born. Same dark hair, same strong jawline.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
The nurses at the hospital couldn't stop commenting on how obvious it was whose son he was. Marcus smiled at the memory. Really? I always thought I looked more like you. Oh no, darling. You were absolutely your father's son. It's remarkable how genetics work, isn't it? Sometimes the paternal traits are so dominant that there's never any question. Her eyes flicked to me meaningfully. Of course, other times children can look quite different from what you'd expect. I pushed my food around my plate, my appetite completely gone. Every comment felt like a tiny dagger, designed to make Marcus start questioning, start wondering. After dinner, when Marcus went to help with dishes, Vivian cornered me in the hallway. You look tired, dear, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. All those late nights must be catching up with you. I'm pregnant, I replied flatly. Pregnant women get tired. Of course. Though I imagine guilt can be quite exhausting too. She smiled sweetly. You haven't told him yet, have you? About your little indiscretion? There was no indiscretion. Oh, Celeste, I've lived long enough to recognize the signs. The way you avoid eye contact when he talks about the baby's future. The way you tense up whenever anyone mentions how much she'll look like her daddy. Guilty consciences are written all over a person's face if you know how to read them. I wanted to scream, to tell her exactly what I thought of her twisted manipulation, but Marcus was just in the next room. Instead, I walked away, claiming I needed to use the bathroom. The psychological warfare escalated over the following weeks. Vivian would drop by our apartment unannounced, always with some excuse about bringing baby clothes or checking on my health. She'd make casual observations about my changing appearance, my mood swings, anything she could twist into evidence of my supposed guilt. You know, Marcus, she said during one of these visits, I was just thinking about how wonderful it will be when the baby arrives and we can see who she takes after. DNA is such a fascinating thing, so definitive. I watched Marcus's face carefully. There it was again, that small frown, the slight pause before he responded. The doubt was growing, fed by his mother's careful cultivation. She started asking pointed questions about my work schedule, about David Morrison specifically. Did Marcus know we'd traveled to conferences together? Did he know about our project meetings that sometimes ran late? Each question was framed as innocent curiosity, but I could see the calculation behind every word. The worst part was how she'd look at my belly. Not with the warm anticipation of a grandmother-to-be, but with something cold and assessing, as if she were already planning how to prove the child wasn't her family's. One evening, Marcus came home from work, looking troubled. Celeste, can we talk? My heart sank. Of course. He sat across from me at our small dining table, his hands clasped in front of him. My mom mentioned something today that I can't stop thinking about. What did she say? She asked if I knew about your business trips with David. She seemed to think there might be something I should know about. His voice was careful, controlled, but I could hear the hurt underneath. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading. Marcus, there's nothing to know. David and I work together. We've traveled for conferences, yes, but always in a professional capacity. Nothing inappropriate has ever happened between us. But you, did share hotel accommodations? I felt trapped. We stayed at the same hotels for conferences, yes, but in separate rooms. Marcus, you have to believe me. I would never cheat on you. I love you. This baby is yours. He stared at me for a long moment. I want to believe you, Celeste. I really do. But my mom seems to think... Your mom is trying to destroy our marriage, I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. She's been planting these ideas in your head since the baby shower. Can't you see what she's doing? She's concerned about me, about us. She just wants to make sure... She wants to make sure she stays the most important woman in your life. I snapped. She can't stand that you chose me, that we're building our own family. Marcus's face hardened. That's not fair. My mother loves me. She's just looking out for my interests. At the expense of mine? At the expense of our child's? If you have nothing to hide, then why are you so upset about her questions? The words hit me like a physical blow. This was exactly what Vivian wanted, to turn my legitimate anger at her manipulation into evidence of guilt. I'm upset because the woman who's supposed to be my mother-in-law is systematically trying to convince my husband that I'm an adulteress carrying another man's baby. How exactly should I be reacting? Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was strained. I just need some time to think. That night, he slept on the couch. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling and feeling our daughter move restlessly inside me, as if she could sense the tension surrounding her even before birth. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't keep playing defense against Vivian's accusations. I needed to go on the offense, and I knew exactly where to start. I called in sick to work and spent the day making phone calls, gathering information, following the threads of my own suspicions about my mother-in-law. If she wanted to play detective, then two could play that game. It turned out that Vivian Hendricks had quite a few secrets of her own. Her late husband's business partner, Robert, was surprisingly willing to talk once I explained my situation. The picture he painted of Vivian's marriage was far different from the devoted wife narrative she liked to present. Harold was a good man, but Vivian made his life hell, Robert told me over coffee at a small diner across town. She was obsessed with controlling every aspect of his life, including his relationships with his children. When Marcus started dating seriously in college, she sabotaged every relationship he had. How? Anonymous phone calls to the girls' parents, spreading rumors about their character, sometimes even hiring private investigators to dig up dirt. She's got quite the talent for finding people's weaknesses and exploiting them. My blood ran cold. Has she ever hired investigators for Marcus's relationships? Robert's expression grew grim. I'd bet money on it. That woman doesn't leave anything to chance when she feels her position is threatened. That evening, I confronted Vivian, directly. I drove to her house and rang the doorbell, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. She opened the door with that familiar false smile. Celeste, what a surprise. Is everything all right? We need to talk. She led me to her pristine living room, the same space where she'd hosted my baby shower just weeks ago. What's on your mind, dear? I know what you're doing, I said simply. The questions, the insinuations, the systematic campaign to destroy my marriage. It stops now. Vivian's smile never wavered. I'm afraid I don't know what you mean. I know about the private investigator you hired to follow me. I know about the photos you have of me having lunch with David. I also know that those photos were taken from angles that make innocent interactions look suspicious. For the first time, I saw a flicker of surprise cross her face. You've been busy. Not as busy as you. Tell me, Vivian, how does it feel to know that your son is about to become a father, and instead of celebrating, you're trying to destroy his happiness? She stood up slowly, her composure finally cracking. My son deserves better than a lying little tramp who's trying to pass off another man's baby as his. Your son deserves better than a mother who's so desperate for control that she'll destroy his marriage based on lies and manipulated evidence. Lies? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I have photographs, Celeste, hotel records, credit card receipts. I have enough evidence to prove your affair 10 times over. Our evidence of a working relationship that you've twisted into something sinister. But here's what you don't have, Vivian. You don't have the truth. And when this baby is born, and Marcus sees his own eyes looking back at him, when the DNA test proves what I already know, what do you think will happen to your relationship with your son? Her face went pale. You wouldn't dare demand a DNA test. No innocent woman would put her child through that. Watch me, I said, standing to leave. And when that test proves I'm right, I'll make sure Marcus knows exactly how his mother tried to destroy his family based on her own paranoid delusions. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Vivian, if you contact my husband with any more of your poison, if you make any more accusations, or if you try to interfere in my marriage again, I'll make sure everyone in your social circle knows exactly what kind of woman you really are. I have quite a few interesting stories from your late husband's business partner. For once, Vivian Hendricks had nothing to say. The silence from Vivian lasted exactly 3 days. Then Marcus came home from work with an envelope in his hand, his face ashen. "What's that?" I asked, though my stomach was already dropping. "She sent this to my office," he said quietly, holding up what looked like a professional report. "DNA, testing information, prenatal paternity testing. She wants us to have it done." I felt the room tilt. She what? Marcus sank into his chair, the envelope trembling slightly in his hands. "She says if there's nothing to hide, this will put all the questions to rest. She's even offering to pay for it." The audacity of it took my breath away. Even after our confrontation, even after I'd called her bluff, she was doubling down. "Marcus, you can't be seriously considering this." "I don't know what to think anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "The things she's shown me, the photographs, the timeline. Celeste, I want to believe you, but the doubt is eating me alive." "What photographs?" I demanded. He pulled out his phone and showed me images that made my blood freeze. There I was, having lunch with David at the Riverside Cafe. The angle made it look intimate, romantic even. Our hands appeared to be touching across the table, though I remembered we'd simply been reviewing documents. Another photo showed us walking into the Denver hotel, and from the carefully cropped perspective, it looked like we were walking closely together, perhaps even holding hands. "These were taken by a private investigator," Marcus said quietly. "She hired someone to follow you." The violation felt like a physical blow. "And you don't see anything wrong with your mother hiring someone to spy on your pregnant wife?" "I see something wrong with my wife having romantic lunches with another man while I'm out of town working to support our family." "Romantic?" I snatched the phone from his hands, studying the photos more carefully. "Marcus, look at this. Really look. This photo of us at lunch was taken through the restaurant window with a telephoto lens. You can see the angle is deliberately deceptive. And this one at the hotel? We're not holding hands. I'm carrying my briefcase, and the strap is between us. She's manipulated these images to make innocent interactions look guilty." Marcus stared at the photos again, and I could see the internal war playing out on his face. "But why would she go to such lengths if there wasn't something to find?" "Because she's terrified of losing control over you," I said. "Marcus, your mother has sabotaged every serious relationship you've ever had. I know about Jennifer in college, about Sarah after graduation. Did you ever wonder why none of those relationships worked out?" His head snapped up. "How do you know about them?" "Because I did some investigating of my own. Vivian has a pattern, Marcus. She finds ways to destroy any woman who threatens her position as the most important female in your life." I could see him wavering, the careful foundation of doubt. His mother had built starting to crack. That's when I played my final card. "You want a DNA test?" I said, standing up despite my protesting back. "Fine, let's do it. Right now, today. Let's drive to the lab and get it done, and when it proves that this baby is yours, I want your mother out of our lives forever." Marcus blinked in surprise. "You would actually do that?" "Marcus, I'm 8 months pregnant, with your daughter. I have nothing to hide and everything to lose if I'm lying. Yes, I'll take the test. But I have conditions." "What conditions?" "When the results prove I'm telling the truth, Vivian apologizes publicly to both of us. She admits she was wrong, and she agrees to have no contact with our family until she can treat me with the respect I deserve as your wife and the mother of your child." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "And if the test shows otherwise?" "It won't. But if it somehow did, I'll leave. I'll disappear from your life completely, and you'll never have to see me again." The confidence in my voice seemed to shake him more than any of my previous denials. A guilty person wouldn't be so eager for proof, and we both knew it. That afternoon, we drove to the medical lab in uncomfortable silence. The prenatal paternity test was more complex than I'd expected, requiring blood samples from both Marcus and me, along with detailed medical history. The technician explained that the results would be available in 3 to 5 business days. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked as we sat in the waiting room afterward. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." That evening, I called Vivian myself. "I thought you'd like to know that we took your suggested DNA test today." There was a long pause on the other end. "You did?" "Marcus and I both gave samples this afternoon. Results should be back by Friday." I let that sink in before continuing. "I'm curious, Vivian. How confident are you in your accusations? Confident enough to make a public apology when you're proven wrong?" "If I'm proven wrong, which I won't be, then of course I'll apologize." "Good, because I'm planning to frame that apology and hang it in our nursery." The next few days were torture. Marcus tried to act normal, but I could feel the tension radiating from him. He'd catch himself staring at my belly with an unreadable expression, and I knew he was wondering whose child was growing inside me. The doubt his mother had planted was a living thing now, growing stronger each day despite my reassurances. Vivian, meanwhile, seemed increasingly nervous. She called Marcus multiple times, asking if we'd heard anything yet, reminding him that she was there for him no matter what the results showed. Her confidence from our phone call was nowhere to be found. Friday morning, the lab called. The results were ready. Marcus insisted on going alone to pick them up, and I didn't argue. I knew what they would show, but I also knew he needed to see it for himself, away from any influence I might have. He was gone for 2 hours. When he finally returned, his face was unreadable. "Well?" I asked, my heart pounding despite my certainty. He held up the official lab report, and I could see tears in his eyes. 99.97% probability that I am the father. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I almost collapsed. "I told you so." "Celeste, I'm so sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry." He crossed the room and pulled me into his arms, being careful of my swollen belly. "I should have trusted you. I should have believed you from the beginning. Your mother is very convincing when she wants to be. She's also about to be very sorry." His voice was hard, now angry in a way I'd never heard before. "I called her from the car. She's coming over." Vivian arrived 30 minutes later, her face pale but her chin raised defiantly. "Marcus, darling, you sounded upset on the phone." "Sit down, Mom." She perched on the edge of our couch, her purse clutched in her lap like a shield. "What's this about?" Marcus held up the DNA report. "This is about the fact that you've spent the last month trying to convince me that my wife was unfaithful and carrying another man's child. This is about the fact that you hired a private investigator to spy on her. This is about the fact that you manipulated photographs and twisted innocent interactions to support your delusions. Vivian's face crumpled as she read the results. For a moment, she looked genuinely shocked, as if she'd actually believed her own lies. Then her expression hardened again. "Well, I suppose congratulations are in order," she said stiffly. "That's it?" I asked incredulously. "That's your response? You nearly destroyed our marriage and all you have to say is congratulations?" "I was protecting my son." "You were destroying your son," Marcus said firmly. "Mom, I want you to listen very carefully. You have two choices. You can apologize sincerely to Celeste and agree to treat her with the respect she deserves as my wife, or you can leave our lives permanently." Vivian looked between us, clearly calculating her options. "Marcus, you can't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. You tried to convince me that the woman I love was a liar and a cheat. You tried to make me doubt my own child. What kind of mother does that? The kind of mother who loves her son enough to protect him from making a terrible mistake." "The terrible mistake here was trusting you," Marcus said quietly. "You have 1 minute to decide. Apologize genuinely or get out." Vivian sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she stood up, her purse still clutched against her chest. "I won't be blackmailed into false apologies." "Then we're done," Marcus said. She looked at him for a long moment, perhaps expecting him to back down, to choose her over me as he always had before. When he didn't, something shifted in her expression. "You'll regret this," she said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "The only thing I regret is not standing up to you sooner." After she left, Marcus and I sat together on our couch, his hand resting on my belly where our daughter was growing. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I'm so sorry I doubted you." "Just promise me something," I said. "Promise me that you'll never let anyone come between us again. Not your mother, not anyone." "I promise. From now on, it's you and me and our baby. That's our family." 3 weeks later, our daughter Emma was born. She had Marcus's dark hair and his strong jawline, exactly like Vivian had said he'd had. As a baby. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Vivian never came to the hospital. She never called to congratulate us or ask about her granddaughter. For months, I expected her to show up, to try to worm her way back into our lives, but she never did. A year later, we heard through family members that she'd moved to Arizona to be closer to Marcus's cousin. She'd apparently told everyone that we'd forbidden her from seeing her granddaughter, painting herself as the victim of our unreasonable demands. Marcus was hurt by the loss of his mother, but he never wavered in his support of our family. "She made her choice," he would say whenever I asked if he missed her. "She chose her pride over her son and granddaughter. Emma is 3 now, and she's never known her paternal grandmother. Sometimes I feel sad about that, about the relationship. That could have been if Vivian had been able to accept me as part of her family, but mostly, I feel grateful. Grateful that her accusations forced us to prove the truth. Grateful that Marcus ultimately chose trust over doubt. And grateful that our daughter is growing up in a home where love isn't conditional on meeting someone else's impossible standards." The DNA test results are still framed in Emma's nursery, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the truth is worth fighting for, even when the people who should support you are the ones trying to tear you down. Looking back now, I realize that Vivian's accusations were the best thing that ever happened to our marriage. Not because of the pain they caused, but because they forced Marcus and me to confront the truth about boundaries and loyalty. The DNA test didn't just prove Emma's paternity, it proved that our bond was stronger than the poison someone else tried to inject into it. 6 months after Emma's birth, we received an unexpected call from Marcus's Aunt Patricia. Vivian had suffered a mild heart attack and was asking for Marcus. He spent 3 sleepless nights deciding whether to visit her in the hospital. I keep thinking about what kind of example I want to set for Emma, he told me one evening as we watched our daughter sleep. Do I want her to see that family can treat you terribly and face no consequences? Or do I want her to understand that love requires respect? In the end, he chose to visit Vivian alone. She was smaller than he remembered, fragile in her hospital bed, and for a moment, his resolve wavered. But when she started the conversation by asking if he was sure about that DNA test, his clarity returned. Mom, I came here hoping you'd had time to think about what you did. I hoped you might want to apologize and meet your granddaughter. I stand by everything I said, Vivian replied weakly. That woman manipulated you from the beginning. Marcus kissed her forehead and left. It was the last time they spoke. Emma is 7 now, and she occasionally asks about her grandmother in Arizona. We tell her the truth in age-appropriate ways. Some people aren't able to love others without trying to control them, and that's not the kind of love we want in our family. The business I started from our apartment has grown into a successful consultancy. David Morrison, the colleague Vivian was so suspicious of, became one of our biggest clients and remains a trusted friend. Marcus was promoted to regional manager last year, and we bought a house with a big backyard where Emma can run and play. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd backed down, if I'd accepted Vivian's treatment and tried to appease her. Would Marcus have ever fully trusted me? Would Emma have grown up watching her mother be diminished and controlled? Would I have spent years trying to prove my worth to someone determined never to see it? The whispered accusation at my baby shower changed everything, but not in the way Vivian intended. It didn't destroy our family. It strengthened it. It didn't expose my lies. It revealed her true character. And it didn't make me lose my place in Marcus's life. It helped me claim it completely. Last week, Emma came home from school excited about Mother's Day crafts. She'd made me a card that read, "My mom is brave and protects our family." When I asked her what made her think about bravery, she said her teacher had talked about how sometimes the right thing is also the hardest thing. She has no idea how perfectly she captured the lesson of that terrible day when her grandmother tried to convince her father that she wasn't really his daughter. But somehow, at 7 years old, Emma already understands that protecting the people you love sometimes means standing up to the people who should love you back. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.